Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guest is a singer and songwriter originally from the United States, now residing in Malta. Her name is Chellcy Reitsma. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. And very, very fascinating life story that you've got. And I had like different kind of ways of jumping into this, but I wanted to kind of just get it really from your words, and we kind of like follow the journey from there. So talk us through your musical journey from beginnings to present day. So obviously I know that you used to be a belly dancer, and that was what you were doing sort of beforehand. So talk us through sort of that career, the transition to music, and then where you are today.
Okay, all right. Well, I was a professional dancer. I did pretty much everything. I started dancing when I was a small child. I've done everything from ballet, tap, jazz, Irish, salsa, bachata, flamenco. I did all of it at some point. But the ethnic dances like Egyptian dancing, belly dancing, but not just belly dancing, also the folkloric styles, which a lot of people don't realize that there's a difference between the more like cabaret style, which you wear like the two-piece and you show more skin, and it's a completely different style than the folkloric dancing from all the different regions of Egypt. And and I did some Middle Eastern dances as well as like some gypsy styles and also Latin styles. And I came up with my own fusion style, which was like the old style of rumba from the 1930s and 40s, mixed with Egyptian cabaret style belly dancing, and also samba, the solo style samba, not the duet stuff. And I called it Sarumba Arabic. I made a teaching video and everything. So yeah, that was like my life. I toured all over Europe and North America. And I worked with a lot of musicians. I also took a lot of courses, and I went to a lot of camps and stuff on Middle Eastern music, just to become a better dancer, because when you are doing ethnic forms of dancing, you really need to understand the music, different kinds of rhythms go along with different songs, which go with different costuming and different styles of dancing, and you have to know all of it and which region it's from. So I would go to these music camps, and I had a darbuka, or Egyptians call it a tabla. And I tried to learn how to play. I never became professional, but I learned well enough that I could play for my students and my dance company and stuff. So that was my music training.
Nice.
Yeah, so I never really knew that I could sing or songwrite at all, actually. I just had the Middle Eastern music background. And then I became injured and my dance career ended, and my injuries are permanent.
This is something I wanted to explore very briefly. I don't want to dwell on like negatives, but I do kind of find it interesting when you have like reinvention in life and how people approach that. So you have this injury and you spent many years at this point training, as you said, like even creating your own dance fusion, like all sorts of stuff. You traveled the world. So you've had a lot of great experiences, but then you get this moment where the main thing that you're doing in your life has now been halted. Now you're forced to do something different. So talk us through kind of that process there, like how you kind of decided to then transition into music, and just like, how you kind of found the motivation again to pursue a completely different path.
Okay. It was kind of, it was a challenge because I am still a visual artist as well. So I thought, okay, I'll just go back to my visual art background, painting and drawing. But I was in so much pain, I couldn't even sit at the easel for very long. So it was easiest for me to just be like lying on the couch or in the bed for about the first year of injury. And I was like, what am I gonna do, So I started writing poetry again, and then I started having like these kind of melody lines and different things pop in my head, like always. Like I've always had that, but I never pursued it. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to try writing a song. And I did. I wrote my first song as a collaboration with my mom while I was lying on the couch. And then as soon as I could kind of get around a bit with some crutches or in a wheelchair, I hobbled across the street to this dance studio who happened to have a vocal coach. So I took a few lessons with her, and I was like, can I sing or not? You know, I was so terrified, honestly, because I'm a dancer and a visual artist. I express myself very quietly, you know, no word, no sound coming out really. So to try to sing, I was absolutely terrified. Palms sweating, voice quivering. I started crying. It was very dramatic. But she told me, yes, you do have a voice and you can sing, but you need to calm down. So that's where it all started.
Interesting. I mean, okay, this will sound like a bit of a silly question, but just bear with me for 1 minute. So obviously you pursued dancing and that was your passion, that was your life for a period of your life. Then you kind of were forced to then transition into something else. And I don't believe that anyone really pursues something unless they have a passion for it. I mean, there are times in life when you're forced to do things you don't want to do, and that's just part of life, got to pay the bills, right? But at the same time, you know, you had this opportunity to transition into music. You were feeling that this was right. How does it compare to your previous career? And also, is it the same kind of level of passion? Is it different? Is it better? Like, how does it compare and contrast?
It's very different. I think the passion level is the same. But I have to say, I enjoy this just as much, if not more, than dancing. And I actually regret not having always pursued music, to be honest. And I even wish that I had done musicals or something, because I could dance. So why didn't I ever think to dance and sing? Hello, like it's not that big of a leap. But I just was so timid and shy about singing, I guess. So, but yeah, I absolutely love it. Definitely compares.
It's, you know, it's interesting to me because like yourself, I have a lot of different things that I'm into, like different, let's say, fields within the creative sphere. I like to think of it like a creative sphere. And to be fair, I think all humans have this. You know, if you're good at, like, say, this thing, then you're also going to be sort of probably good at these things connected to this thing. And, you know, so for instance, if you're a good singer-songwriter, chances are you'll probably be a good writer, good poet, maybe a good singer, good artist even, you know, like it's that creative flair, isn't it? Because, you know, by contrast, like just for myself, I'm terrible at like more logic-based things like maths, things like science. I'm useless. I find it interesting, but I'm just useless. Like, I don't know, my brain just doesn't really click that way. I can do it, but it's just very slow. But when it comes to the creative process, it almost feels effortless. Like the work has to be put in, but it comes naturally. And to me, it's like no surprise that performers such as yourself, you know, find that transition maybe easier than others would in the same position. And that's kind of another area I'd like to explore a little bit. Like, how is the creative process different for you in terms of like how you would have set up dances and routines and stuff like that compared to setting up a show as a musician or performing or writing a song? Like, how does that differ from your perspective?
Honestly, I don't really feel a big difference. I always thought, whether I was a dancer or a singer-songwriter, when I'm setting up for a show, I always think of like the whole package, like what the viewer is going to experience. So costuming, makeup, any projections, lighting. I mean, if I'm on a stage where all of that is possible and not in some like smoky, seedy bar, but when there's actually a stage and possibility for that as a singer-songwriter, or as a dancer, then I guess I just try to think of the whole package, no matter what I'm doing.
And this is interesting as well, because performance such as yourself with such a extensive dancing background, I mean, I imagine you must spend a lot of time working on that stage presence, like planning that out. I mean, obviously for yourself, you won't be able to necessarily dance to the level that you might want to, or I don't know what your limitations are in that respect, but certainly you must be working on like the choreography of anyone, if you do have dancers on the stage or whatever. Like, are you putting a lot of time into, I suppose, the performance side of things as far as like building a stage show?
There's definitely a comparison. I'm always thinking about how I'm going to use the whole stage. Because I don't like it when an artist has this massive, gorgeous stage, unless they have a spotlight. Exactly. Unless they have a spotlight and it's like a monologue or it's like a piece that demands that. But if it's not, if it's like a music performance and you just need to take over the whole effing space and like be there, you know what I mean? Like really put some energy into it. So I always think about how I'm going to use the space that I have. And that includes everything, the lighting, where I place the musicians, what I personally do, like the pattern I walk on stage, you know, all of these things.
Would you say were there like the biggest lessons that you learned during your time as a professional dancer?
The biggest lesson I learned as a dancer? Well, I guess number one, never date anyone from the band or sleep with them, ever. Big no-no, don't do it. And that goes for your band, your musician as well, okay? Don't, you know what, where you need to get your money from. Okay, that's lesson number one.
I'm sorry, I got to explore this a little bit. Like, I mean, it's not irregular for someone to date someone that they're performing with. I mean, it makes sense. Close proximity. It's creative. It's passionate. It's understandable. But did you not have like a moment where? And again, it's going to sound like a silly question because I know that if I was in a similar situation, it's a lot of the time it's a toss up between emotions versus, you know, being sensible, right? In terms of business, you know, did you kind of think maybe this is a bad idea, or were you just like, let's see what happens?
Honestly, I never actually allowed myself to go there because, like, I never actually acted on any of the feelings I had for anyone that I was performing with. That's what I mean.
I misunderstood.
Is that what you're asking? Okay.
I see. No, this is so. It's not something you personally dealt with. It's something you've seen happen, and then you're like, it's led to. It's been a bad experience. Is that what you mean then?
Yes, and I've personally seen it happen to others, but then I also was put in that position on numerous occasions. But I never gave in because I knew it was going to be a bad situation in the long run. So
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I think, I mean, there's so many bands where that's happened and it causes problem. I mean, I think the heart wants what the heart wants, but at the same time, it's business, you know, when you really think about it, like it's art and it's artistic and there's going to be passion and everything involved. But I mean, I know that if I was in that position and I form a relationship with someone in my band, it would, because if the relationship ends, I mean, we've seen it. Some bands make it work, like ABBA sort of made it work, but that was kind of the catalyst for the end for them, really. It was, arguably, they made some of their best work at that point. But, I mean, I don't know, like, they it's very awkward. Like, you see, like, is it The Winner Takes It All in that video where they purposefully made it to kind of reflect on...
Yeah, I think so.
It's like, oh, this is awkward. And it's I think Fleetwood Mac, same thing. I mean, that was even, I think Stevie,
that didn't go well.
Yes, I think, didn't Stevie just used to write songs about how much her ex-husband sucked and then got him to play them? Which I think is almost like the most brutal kind of revenge of all time.
Yeah, and look at Sonny and Cher too. Oh my God.
Oh gosh. And it's
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? I suppose.
And
but,
even if you're still in the relationship and everything's fine romantically, but professionally or whatever, you're like, I'm not happy with your playing and I don't want you in my band anymore. It's kind of awkward if you're sleeping with them. You know, it's like, I don't know. It makes it more difficult to be professional and be like, hey, you're out of here. If you have this like super personal relationship with them.
Absolutely. I think in general as well, not just in music, but in life,
Mm-hmm.
it's a pretty good rule to just not get romantically involved with people that you're doing business with or working with, because it creates a power dynamic. I mean, you gave that example there in a band. So let's say, okay, it's equal footing, everyone's equal, but you agree that the person you love, they're just not pulling their weight. And maybe that's right, maybe it isn't. But if that decision is then made, well, that's going to be like the end of the relationship, surely. Because but it's too conflicting then. And of course, I think it would take a really strong person, like strength of character, to be able to overcome that and still either pursue the relationship or for example, like break up with someone and continue in the band. And it happens, but yeah, I just think it's an unnecessary power dynamic thing, and it's especially bad when you think about it in workplaces when the classic someone sleeps with their boss dynamic, which I think a lot of the time is cause for someone you can get released for doing things like that. It's not considered unprofessional conduct.
Right.
But yeah, like more to the point, it's just once you do that, they've then got that power over you, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I don't know, that's a very dangerous area to be in, isn't it?
It sure is. It just makes everything so awkward. And even if nothing actually happens, but they just start flirting with you or ask you out on a date and you say no, it still makes it awkward. Like, you just shouldn't go there.
Right, because then so it's like, okay.
Exactly.
So I'll see you at band practice next week. Like,
yeah. Thanks for thinking of me. It's terrible. It just puts everyone in an awkward position, and I think it's a big no. So yeah.
I will ask just one more question on this. Like, as far as that, because that was the biggest lesson that you saw of other people. Were there any particular instances that you saw that of that where it was like it led to, I don't know, like any examples you could give of that, like where it broke down and it was a problem?
On a dance level, I actually saw somebody who got in a serious relationship with her drummer, and they broke up, and she needed to break up with him. He was like an abusive asshole in their relationship, basically. So she broke up with him, and then she couldn't get any work at any of the nightclubs in Chicago. She was completely ostracized, and even out of state. Like it was anyone that was friends with him would not work with her on any level.
Oh, that's so petty.
So she
as well,
lost so much work for it. Yeah, it really hurt her career a lot. So, and I can only imagine that could also happen in the music scene. Like at least the music scene is much larger. The Middle Eastern dance scene is much smaller than the music scene. So I guess you're a little safer there, but it also depends on where you live and your niche of music. So
it kind of brings us to a wider point about how it's just good to foster positive working relationships with people in the industry that you're operating in. I mean, something like that can cause problems as far as finding work, but even just being, for example, difficult to work with or having a bad reputation can just immediately prevent you from getting work. And it's very serious when your livelihood is at stake and that's happening. It's so great advice there.
Be nice and professional.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like I was on a set the other day, I'll share a story for everyone. This was awkward. So I'm doing a shoot, and someone comes up to me, and they say, "Oh, you see that other person that you've been talking to?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it's like, they used to bully me at XYZ place, and I was just like, because I've only just met everybody. Like I'm new here, like barely spoken to this person, and this other person's telling me this, and I was thinking in my head, I was like, oh, and I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, and then they were. There's two things that tickled me that really made me laugh. Firstly, was just them telling me that in general. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do with this information? Like, I mean, I'm sorry that's happened to you. That's bad, you know. But what am I supposed to do about that? Like, do you expect me to just be like, oh, okay, it's us against them? Yeah, it's them, you know. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not gonna do that. We're professionals, you know. And then they said, which was really funny. They were like, oh, you can be friends with them if you want. I'm just letting you know. And I think maybe their intentions were in the right place, but then other things made me feel uncomfortable even further. So they said that, and then
what the hell?
Yeah, other times, for instance, between takes, I'd be talking to other people that I knew from other films and stuff, and we're just talking, but we're talking a bit quieter. You know, maybe it's secret, maybe it's not. Maybe I just don't want to broadcast it to everyone in the room. You know, and this person would come over and sort of do that. Oh, so what are we talking about? What are we? You know, like that sort of person that is like, they have to know everything and they have to get involved. And I don't want to be mean, but you know what I'm on about. Like, with people that want to know all the secrets, but not probably for nefarious reasons, not for like, oh, because I'm a great secret keeper and you can totally trust me. No, it's more like, tell me so that I know, so that I can spread wildfire. I don't know. Just people.
It's so true.
Anyway,
that's crazy.
Bringing it back to yourself, music. How long have you been doing this so far in music professionally?
I took my first lesson, I think, in 2015.
Okay, right, yeah.
Somewhere around there. Could have been 2014, I don't know. But I recorded my first song and released it in 2016.
Sweet. So with that time so far, what would you say are the biggest lessons or takeaways you've had during that time?
I guess it's just to persevere. I've learned a couple of important lessons, honestly. One is, even if you're scared of it, just go ahead and do it. And the second one is, don't push or expect perfection. Like, just do it the best you can at the stage where you are, like at that moment, and then learn from it and do even better the next time, and even better with every project. And then eventually, you'll be amazing. But never think that you don't have more to learn, no matter how good you get, because there's always the next step, the next level. You can get even better. You can always nitpick yourself to death, but then if you expect too much imperfection and you nitpick yourself and your projects too much, you won't ever actually release anything. So kind of just go for it.
Thank you for sharing. What would you say, and this is sort of connected a little bit to the previous question, but what would you say throughout all of your careers would be the biggest obstacles you faced, and then how did you then overcome them and sort of persevere and move forward?
This is going to sound really weird because I'm white, but I've actually faced a lot of discrimination.
Okay.
Especially when I was in the Middle Eastern dance scene, but also not as much in music, but a little bit. Like, as a tall, blonde American woman, I faced discrimination in a lot of different ways, either because I'm American or because I'm a woman or because I'm blonde, you know, and people think if you're blonde or you've got big boobs that you're a total dipstick. And you know what I'm saying? Like that you're unintelligent.
So I don't think
or that
I've
you're
ever,
going to be a snob.
I don't think I've ever heard an American use the term dipstick before. I thought that was just a British exclusive term. That's amazing.
Really?
Yeah. Sorry.
Dipstick is international, baby.
Fair enough. There you go. It's the first.
So yeah, that's been difficult to overcome when you walk into a room and people automatically think that you're going to be snobby and dumb. It's definitely something difficult to overcome. And another one is that people automatically assume that I'm going to be racist.
Oh,
I'm not.
because you're
that happens
American?
a lot. I don't know, either because I'm Dutch American and there are some racist Dutch people, the American ones especially, not as much the ones from Holland, but there are some racist Dutch people, of course there are. But I don't know, maybe because I'm white, tall, blonde, I'm not sure. Or maybe because I am American, because racism is rampant in America, honestly. But yeah, so I always feel like I have to overcome that like right away, like be friendly, be professional, be well-spoken, so that hopefully if they had that in their head, I change their minds very quickly. So.
It is interesting in these industries, like the entertainment industry, how much discrimination there is. No matter who you are, you will encounter some form of discrimination. I mean, even myself, like I've never had like any outward obvious discrimination, but there's been little things as far as like how people treat you according to how they perceive you. You know, because my mindset is always treat everyone with respect, you know, no matter who they are, just treat everyone with respect and present yourself professionally. But as you say, sometimes people just, they see you, they get an idea of you, and then they put you in a box and that's it. You're in that box now. You can't move out of that box. That's you. And it's like kind of audacious. It's like, how dare you do that? Like, what gives you the right to do that? And it's rampant in the entertainment industry. And I mean, I think we're slowly getting there as far as there is a lot more diversity now in the entertainment industry. But at the same time, you still see it in certain things. You still see it. I mean, for instance, a few productions I've been on recently, even some of the production staff that have worked on those, you know, they get a client send something through, and sometimes it will be like being in a time capsule where the brief, you look at the brief and it has something that's like, well, maybe this was acceptable like 30, 40 years ago, but this is very questionable by today's standards. And it's like in terms of people's attitudes or the things that they write or how they want something portrayed. You know what I mean? It's interesting because, you know, you get all these progressive people coming through trying to do something brilliant, trying to include everyone. And then you still got these other people that have these kind of archaic, backward ideas, and it's like a big clash, and it's true.
And that actually brings me to imposter syndrome. That's another thing that I've worked really hard to overcome, because in the Middle Eastern and North African dance scene, obviously I always felt like an imposter, and I was like, am I appropriating, you know, is this cultural appropriation? Should I even be doing this as a career? I always felt awkward, but I really loved it. And so I just worked really hard at trying to respect their cultures and to learn from them, and take what I learned and make it my own rather than trying to be like one of them. I still maintained my own name, Chellcy. I never changed it to any of those weird belly dancer names that you hear. Sorry, I've got an issue about that. So I never changed my name. I just presented myself as myself all the time, wherever I went. Because I didn't want to appropriate anyone's culture, but I wanted to partake in it. So that I always felt like an imposter. And then I moved on to music, and I still felt like an imposter because I don't have any professional music training other than some Middle Eastern dance camps. You know, like I was like, what am I doing? So it was always like a struggle to get over the imposter syndrome.
Well,
but I think I'm over it.
That's great to hear. I'm glad to hear that. What kind of advice could you give people to overcome imposter syndrome?
I guess just learn as much as you can about whatever industry you're trying to break into, so that you mentally, yourself, like psychologically, you don't feel like an imposter anymore. You feel like I actually know at least a little something, you know? Yeah, and don't come in all like a big know-it-all or defensive, you know, like be open to criticism, because that's how you learn, and be open to learning new things because it's all new to you anyways. So just be humble and take it in. And, you know, if somebody gives you criticism that's not helpful, just, you know, brush it off. And when you do get some tidbits of like wisdom from people, then really hold on to those gold nuggets, you know?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with that because great advice, by the way. Thank you so much for sharing. Really appreciate it. Yeah, the advice thing I've learned, it's interesting. Like a few people are quite open and will share genuinely good advice, but a lot of the time people, it's like, you know, you're on your own, kid kind of attitude, and then every once in a while someone will just turn around to you and be real with you, you know, for like you like, you know what I mean, like when you're just sitting there and you ask someone for advice, and maybe they're not even the sort of person that would normally give advice, but then they're like, all right, I'll give you some advice, and then they just tell you something real, and you just sit there like, wow, okay. And it's and it goes back to what you were saying. It's good to be open to receiving that, you know, not being stubborn, taking it on board, and sitting with it. I often tend to do that. Whoever gives me advice, I'll sit on the things they tell me. And sometimes, a lot of the time, I find that I won't always act on advice straight away. Sometimes I'll sit with it and then I'll act on it a bit later, but I won't disregard it. That's a lesson I learned years ago, because it's very easy to think you know it all, or to feel very self-assured, and we never know it all. We're always growing, aren't we? We're always moving forward, and the more open our hearts and minds and ears are, the more we can develop and grow, arguably.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like to bring it back to just you for a second. So not so much your career, but just you as a person and your upbringing. So you grew up in California, and you've lived in Florence, Italy, Stockholm, Sweden, and now you're in Malta. So talk us through a little bit about, you know, your upbringing and just living in these different countries, what you've kind of learned from that, and then why the decision to sort of eventually settle in Malta.
I grew up in California, in Visalia, between Fresno and Bakersfield in the Central Valley. And I'm telling you, I love my hometown and I love the people there, but that's like the armpit of California, or the Bible Belt, whichever you want to call it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's like small town, and it's very stifling in so many ways. And yeah. And so obviously that made me want to leave as soon as possible, you know, small town girl wants out, right? So typical story, right? So true, right?
It's so just like every movie you ever saw, like.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good thing. I'm not taking a mick. It's a genuinely good thing.
It's true though. It's very stereotypical. So then when I was 21, I moved to Florence, Italy, to study art for a while. So I studied visual art and Italian culture and art history and stuff like that. And that was like for like a program. So I was only there for a little over 6 months. And then I came back to California. And I moved to another small town, Eureka, California. And I went to Humboldt State University. So it's like 5 hours north of San Francisco. I moved there for the beauty. It's like the redwood forest and it's on the beach. It's absolutely gorgeous place. So, but again, it's a small town. But at least it's different because it had like a university mentality, which is a lot better than Visalia's mentality. Yeah, and then I ended up moving to Chicago to go to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And I studied visual arts and art history there as well, again. And I graduated and I was making so much money dancing and teaching. I was like, I'm gonna ride this wave for a while. And so I started touring with bands and with dance companies. I opened my own dance company. I lived in Toronto, Canada for a little while, and I studied with a mentor there for dancing, Yasmina Ramsey. She's like the end all be it all in Canada for Egyptian dancing and folklore dancing. So yeah, and then I lived in Stockholm for a while. I worked there for 12 years off and on, like every year I worked there for a dance convention. And so I eventually just kind of moved there and stayed again for like a short amount of time. It was like, how long was it? About 6 to 8 months I stayed there. And yeah, kept traveling and touring and living in Chicago. And eventually in 2005, I took a tour group to Malta. It was mostly my students. And I performed there and taught some workshops and stuff. And the owner of the dance studio and I just became like instant brother and sister. He's like my long lost brother. So he kept bringing me back every year, a couple times a year sometimes, and I would stay longer and longer. And eventually I just said, I'm gonna move here. And I bought my place in 2009. And I started a very slow and tedious immigration process because I'm a third party national. It was a nightmare. Yeah. I just got my citizenship finally like 2 years ago.
Oh, congratulations.
So. Thank you. I get to pick up my passport this week, actually. Ooh. So very excited about that. So yeah, that's like my story of moving around. I did it all for art and dance and culture and stuff, basically, because that's what drives me.
So I got a couple of questions related to this, and I've also lived abroad, and I think the thing that it taught me, and it's in fairness, I only lived in one other country. I've traveled a lot, but there was one country I lived in for like 3 years. And in the sort of middle of the second year or beginning of the second year, I started to get homesick. I wasn't 100% obvious because I was still kind of resenting the UK. I love the UK now. It's just different times, different things, different point in my life. Yeah. But the point is, I felt a bit homesick, and eventually I recognized, oh wow, it's homesickness. Okay, that's interesting. And eventually I came back, and I think what I realized for myself was that, you know, I love to travel and I love to live away, but like not indefinitely or for too long. I like to kind of have the option of coming back, and that's just for me. What I'm interested by is you've traveled around the world, you've lived in different places, and it makes perfect sense given that, you know, as you say, you grew up in a small town, you wanted to break out because it's almost suffocating, and I totally get that. You know, my mum used to say to me when I was a kid that I had itchy feet. That's the way she explained it. And I didn't really appreciate what that meant until I was older, but basically, you know, you're going to travel the world. That's kind of like the vibe there. Well, yeah. And she was right. She was 100% right. Can't sit still for 5 minutes. But, you know, some people got the bug, some people haven't. Some people are perfectly content. You know, there's people I know who never moved out of our hometown and they're as happy as Larry. And I don't get it, but I do kind of understand that we are all different and we all have different things in life that drive us. And sometimes the drive is security of some description or kind of routine or, you know, whatever the case may be. But I suppose there's the two things that I want to know is, A, did you ever get kind of like travel fatigue, in the sense that you were traveling so much? Was there a point where you were like, okay, I want to just be in one place and settle? And two, ultimately, kind of like what prompted, I understand like you broke it down as far as like how you eventually got to move into Malta, but that's a big decision to, you know, go, okay, I'm done with America. Like, I'm going to make this my home now. Like, do you never feel homesick, or is it just like that was then, this is now? Like, talk us through a little bit that as well.
Well, I guess I did have homesickness here and there, but it's more for the people, and sometimes for certain cultural things. Like, I love the live music scene that the United States has to offer. It's very prolific, you know, compared to some countries. And I love the variety of music and the variety of cultures. It's amazing. You don't always have that everywhere, you know?
Right.
Or you do, but smaller, you know? So I miss that sometimes, and I miss like certain landscapes, especially living in Malta. Sometimes I miss greenery because it's like a desert island.
Okay.
But yeah, so I guess I miss certain cultural and geographical things. And I feel like I really wanted to live abroad because there's certain things about the United States that I'm not happy with, and I can't change them. And there's such huge things that I felt that the quality of my life improved by leaving the United States.
Mm-hmm.
As an artist, I had in some ways more work in the United States, but the cost of living was so expensive that even if I was making 50, 60,000 a year just off of my dancing at the time, I was barely making it, barely. I still had to ask my parents for help sometimes because it was so expensive to live in Chicago. It was just ridiculous. So I feel like now living abroad, like even if I make less money, I still have a higher quality of life. And there's just certain things here that are more relaxed, you know, like there's 24 days of vacation leave by law, you know? And in the United States, it's like unheard of. People are like, what?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you have things like bank holidays in the States? I don't think I've ever heard of that in the States before. It's not a thing, is it?
I don't think we really have a bank holiday. We just have like Memorial Day.
Right. Yeah. So there are like national holiday. Yeah, of course. There's like a few.
Yeah. A handful, very small handful of national holidays that people actually take time off for. Because even on Christmas, you'll find everything open pretty much. Like it's insane. Yeah, they might have shortened hours, but you know, your Starbucks barista will still be there making coffee.
On Christmas Day?
Morning, yes.
That's nuts.
It's
yeah.
sad.
Yeah. I mean, in the UK, okay, let me see. Generally on Christmas Day in the UK, everything will be shut. You'll get maybe a few corner shops be open because they operate on a different license. But even like you can't, like, for instance, you can't get a cab on Christmas Day, or I think you have to pre-book it if you want it, but it's not happening. You know, it's just interesting to me. Like, what? Like, who's going to Starbucks on Christmas Day? Like, I don't know, man. Maybe that's just me.
Right?
Yeah. Like, so some things just don't need to be open certain days, or like they don't need to be open all the time. You know, like I don't know.
No, I totally agree with you. And so some of that stuff, the fact that there's like no public health care really, that you have to have insurance. I mean, it's just so expensive, especially as an artist. No matter how successful you are, it's just really expensive to live there. And so I really benefit from living in Malta as an artist in a lot of ways. And I don't have the pressure to make 100K. I can make less and live a comfortable lifestyle here and still go on vacation somewhere. And I couldn't do that in the States.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you grow up and you get taught that, make as much money as possible, and, you want to get as far as you can. And, it's like the earlier you can retire, the better and everything. And it's like, you get sold a lie, really, when you really think about it. Because the things that I'm chasing, like I was on set the other day and someone asked me, like, do you want to be rich, famous, all that? And they didn't phrase it in that way. It was kind of like, where are your priorities? Like, what are you looking to do? And I was like, well, I just want to do this for a living,
Mm-hmm.
I don't especially care about earning like millions, sure, that'd be great. I'm not saying that if someone wants to give me millions, I'll take that. but like, do you know what I mean? Like, what I look at it more like, I'd like to have the freedom to do what I love, or, I just don't want to work like 9 to 5 anymore, or shift work anymore. Like, I try to keep the goals like simple and just like base it around, instead of things that we're taught at school or things we're taught in society. I look at it more like, you know what, let's look at, what do you want? Because everyone's different. What I want is just the flexibility to do the things I love for a living. And then, as you say, like, sometimes it doesn't matter if you earn loads of money to do that. Like, sometimes people I meet that think differently, that they'll say like, oh, well, this job, I hate this job, but I'll get a lot of money for it. And I'm like, okay, so basically your plan is, assuming it's a 9 to 5, for example, to work 9 to 5 in a job you hate, probably hours past that as well, because most jobs will require that, to then live for the weekend, I guess. I mean, I don't get it. Like, I remember once I had a job interview, and the place was like really posh and expensive, and I was young, I was like 18, 19. But I've been studying business for years at that point, and I saw right through it. It's like, okay, great, you got a nice office, fine. But I was paying attention to like what the people were saying and how they were. And there was a woman escorting me around, and she said, it will always stick with me. She said, "Oh, it's a race to the weekend here." And then she's just like, and she tried to make it seem like, like, oh, it's great working here. But what I heard was, please God, save me. I hate this. Don't join us. Don't, like, But, and like, it kind of just dawned on me that the things that we want in life, they're not as unobtainable as they might seem. As long as we have like we're not afraid, and don't get me wrong, nothing's guaranteed. Right now I'm in a period of my life where I'm actively pursuing the things that I want in life. And it's a gamble. I've had people turn around to me and tell me I'm an idiot for what I'm doing. Oh, well, you should be just pursuing, what you wanted to do at uni, and, you're not earning a lot of money. Like, isn't this a risk? And it's like, yeah, but like, isn't it better to take a risk on stuff that makes you happy than to sit and do things that you hate and then wonder like, oh, I wish I'd tried, or what if, I think that's worse. I think it's better to know that you tried and it was a no, rather than, oh, I never tried, and who knows, maybe I could have got somewhere with this. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And also,
if you're going to ask what if on your deathbed, then just go ahead and do it, right?
And also, like, other people's perceptions of what success is as well. You know what I mean? Like, someone said this to me in a live stream that I did recently, and it got me thinking that, because I said, oh, I'm not a success yet. And they were like, yes, you are. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were kind of implying that the fact that I was doing what I like, it's just by my own standards, I suppose, or expectations, I deemed myself as not being successful. But success is relative. You break it down to like, are you happy? Are you enjoying what you do? Do you like life? That is a success. I think like sometimes we've got to try and break it down and just be at that point where we're happy and, we're in that place where we want to be. And, which, throwing it back to yourself, like, would you say that you're happy and in the place that you want to be in life, and with everything that you've done so far?
Well, I'm happy with everything I've done so far. Yes. I think there's always things that you say, oh, I wish I had done it differently later, you know, like I wish I would have pursued music instead of dancing, but you can't know these things. So I'm basically happy with what I've done in life and up to this point. Lately I've been kind of, COVID set me back slightly, you know. I felt like I was really getting somewhere with my music. I was making a living from my music. Everything was going great. And then COVID happened, and it kind of put a wet blanket on my plans and on everything. And I was very much able to keep it going to a point, even though tours were canceled, things like that happened. But every summer I was able to snap back and have shows and have things like really going well. And then this time I haven't been able to snap back quite as much as I did the last 2 years. And so I took a job. I'm still a freelancer technically, so I'm still self-employed. But I did take more of a full-time freelance position in doing my other thing that I do, which is the production management of cultural and artistic events. So at least it's still in the arts and culture sector, which is my passion. So yeah, I'm going to do this until I can get back on my feet with music and fulfill my contract, and then hopefully, you know, be touring again.
I totally get where you're coming from. Like I can really relate to this because there's been a lot of roles I've taken on, especially in more recent years, where it's the same thing. It's like, okay, I'll do this because it brings in the money, but what I really want to be doing is this. But you know, a good thing to know, and I think to keep in mind for yourself and everyone listening as well, is that you're not alone. There are a lot of people in exactly the same position as us that are trying every single day. You know, like, I mean, just to put it into perspective in my life, right? Uploading videos online every single day, live streaming most days, putting out weekly podcasts. I've just jumped onto someone else's podcast as well that I'm doing weekly now as well.
Nice.
And out music, applying for acting gigs, applying for anything, you know. And every week is, similar feelings. Sometimes you feel like you're making some progress, it's getting exciting. And then there's other weeks that just feel like stagnation, like you feel like you take 5 steps backwards, you know, and it's like, it's all about the journey really, isn't it? And just, as you put it earlier, persevering, pushing forward, keep going. Like, I think we will eventually get where we want to get to, but it's just about hanging in there. And, you know, like, for instance, what I've been doing on TikTok in the past year, I've seen so many people start from just doing something, you know, every once in a while, and then boom, off to the moon. And they're chasing their dreams. Like, I'll give you a really cool example. There was a girl who was working at a supermarket here in the UK called Tesco, and she was just like dancing and just mucking around. And her dream was to be in theatre, to dance, be in theatre and do all that stuff. And, you know, she was uploading all the time, and she got like lots of backlash, lots of criticism, people being mean and all that horrible stuff, but she just kept doing it. And she's really good, and she had a really like bubbly, angelic kind of personality and stuff. And she posted a video like 3 or 4 months ago, and it was like a retrospective of the previous year, 2021. And it shows at the beginning she's like dancing, doing all that, like, you know, during COVID and everything. And at the end of the year, she's kitted out and she's going on stage.
Wow.
A stage production of Heathers, I think it was. And it was quite an emotional video to watch. And I just looked at that like, wow, like, that's what it's about, man. It's about the journey, and you know, keep going, keep pushing with it. You know, it will happen.
100%.
So there you go. Keep going, Chellcy.
All about perseverance. Yeah, no, I'm definitely a warrior. I've had too many setbacks, so I always bounce back. So,
a couple of final questions for you, just to tie things up. What's the best advice you've ever received?
For music?
Could be anything.
Could be any. Oh, geez, this is a tough one. My great aunt. It's not really advice. It's more like an acknowledgement, sort of. My great aunt always said that getting old is hard, but once you're there, it's okay. So it always made me feel like I was going to be okay.
That's really sweet. No, I like that. It's reassuring. It's reassuring. It's like,
right? Yeah. Like, it's a hard process, but once you're there, it's okay.
I think the good thing to remember as well is like you're not alone in it as well. You know, because I get older, and then I noticed all the people my age, and even sometimes people younger, acknowledge the same thing. I'm like, yeah, well, at least we're alive. At least we're going. At least we've got each other. Brilliant.
Yeah.
What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
That two things. Always face your fears, because usually it's going to be the best thing that you've ever done. The more scared you are, the better it's going to be. And also, you're never too old to start something new, because a lot of people think that they have like an expiration date or something, you know, but you don't. You can be 80 if you're still like breathing and moving and cognitive. You can do it, you know, just go for it.
There was a male fashion model, I don't know how many years ago this was, maybe 5 or 10 years ago. It's an Asian fashion model. It's quite a famous story. And the guy had a great look. You know what I'm on about, right? But for those who don't know, it's like this guy, well into his 70s, long hair, long white hair, you know, looked really good for his age. And he pursued modeling, specifically catwalk and all that, for his whole life. And he finally got a break late into his 70s or 60s. And he was doing it. He was living the dream, and he was telling a story, and it was a very beautiful story. And there's a lot of examples of that. The guy who made Kentucky Fried Chicken, Colonel Sanders, got his break very late in life, I believe after many, 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 many failures as well, and quite a difficult life story, but eventually, you know, lived the dream. And that's the thing about it as well, because I thought about all the possibilities, especially in the moments where you doubt yourself. I thought about like, well, what if it never happens? How would I feel about that? What about if I get everything I want? Would I be happy? What if I got everything I wanted and it wasn't what I wanted? You know, all these different things go through my head. But I think ultimately, like, just got to kind of keep it simple, keep pushing towards what you want, and try and make the best of each day. You know, like one of my housemates, I always see him whenever we're hanging out, just taking pictures. And every once in a while, he'd be like, oh, wait, let me get a picture. Let me just video this. And I knew that, because I like to do it too. Not always, but I like to do it too. And it's because you want to like savor the moments, savor these times, because life goes so quickly. And naturally, we're always forward facing. We're always looking forward. We're always like hoping for the best for the future. But, you know, and I said it before on the show, I'll probably sound like a broken record for all my listeners, but, you know, live in the now, live in the moment, man. That's where life is.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Yeah, it's true.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Chellcy. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and exploring your life and going back and forth with you. As we draw things to a close, do you have any upcoming projects or maybe some final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I'm actually working on a new album, my first album. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. Been songwriting every week with the guys, and yeah, we're definitely making headway on that. I have about 12 songs ready, and I'd like to get a few more. So yeah, so be on the lookout for new album, hopefully in a few months.
Absolutely. Oh, brilliant. So it might be a summer deal or early autumn. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Wow.
probably autumn. Yeah.
Fantastic. Look out for it. Well, again, you've been a fantastic guest. I wish you all the best of success and happiness. And just another big thank you for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a real pleasure. Let's do it again sometime.
Would love to. And to all the listeners of the Christian Reeve podcast, as always, be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.